For months and months, no rain falls over the nation's farmlands. Without water, crops dry up and food becomes scarce. This is called a drought. It is a natural disaster. An avalanche begins at the top of a high snow-covered mountain when the weight of a new or drifting snow becomes too heavy for it to be held by the snowpack. This is another natural disaster. A hurricane forms over the ocean. Heavy winds and rain sweep inland, toppling over trees and bringing floods to coastal communities. A natural disaster occurs once again. A volcano erupts, spewing large amounts of carbon dioxide into the air, killing plants and animals and all life in a fiery path. Yet another natural disaster. Disasters are naturally occurring events that have always been a part of our changing planet, gradually altering all of its landscape. Earthquakes occur when stored up energy in the Earth's crust is released, causing the ground to suddenly shake due to movement of rock deep inside of the Earth's crust and mantle. Who remembers what the four layers of Earth are? They are the crust, the mantle, the outer core, and the inner core. Earthquakes can be among the deadliest of natural disasters if they occur in areas where many people live. Generally, the most damage from an earthquake comes from collapsing buildings and fires caused by cracked underground gas pipes. For example, earthquakes often cause cracks in Earth's surface, sometimes forming new valleys. As a result, heavy rains may fill these valleys with water, creating lakes where there were none before. And when this happens, a new ecosystem begins to take shape. Floods occur when water overflows the banks of rivers, ponds, and seas. Heavy rains, snowmelt, or unusually high tides can all cause flooding across the vast distances of Earth. Some areas of the world have seasonal rains called monsoons, during which it rains non-stop for days on end. Flooding is an expected natural event in those places. Periodic flooding has many good effects on the early civilization of these areas, bringing nutrients to the soil and making it more fertile for the crops. Nowadays, flooding is nearly always associated with disaster because it is often destroying homes and villages. Sometimes the water becomes polluted, destroying the natural breeding grounds for fish, thus affecting the entire food chain in this area. Volcanoes are mountains formed by the ejection of lava, gases, and ash from an opening in the Earth's crust. You could say that volcanoes are like hills of fire. When heat and pressure build up within Earth, these hills erupt, and hot gases and magma, or hot molten rock, rise up from deep inside of the Earth's crust, mantle, and core, and come out of volcanoes' opening at the top. Once the magma is released from the volcano, it becomes lava, flowing liquid rock that moves across the ground until it cools and hardens into a rock once again. The extra carbon dioxide in the air caused by the release of the gas can be poisonous to all plants and animals. Sometimes volcanoes cause landslides as well, with loose dirt from the side of the mountain sliding down and burying everything around it. Who remembers the name of the volcano that erupted during the time of the ancient Rome and completely destroyed a nearby city? It was Mount Vesuvius erupting and completely buried the ancient city of Pompeii in Italy with ash. The volcanic eruption wiped out all plant and animal life in the area for a long time. Disease is often caused by natural disasters. Floods, hurricanes, and tsunamis all create breeding grounds for mosquitoes. A tsunami is a large, dangerous wave often caused by an earthquake. Some mosquitoes carry a disease called malaria. It can make people and animals very sick, and many even die from this disease. In places where there are many mosquitoes, people often put tents around their beds to protect them when they are asleep. So you see, sometimes one disaster can lead to another. This is called a domino effect. Just as tipping over one domino tips over all of the other dominoes if they are all lined up in a row. So one change in nature can cause several other changes to occur. Natural disasters cause changes to landscapes and in turn changes the ecosystem around them. As Earth changes, food webs change too. The biggest changes to food webs are caused by habitat destruction. Habitats are destroyed when necessary amounts of food, water, and shelter are no longer readily available to the population. Living organisms have specific needs. If these needs are not met, the organisms will die or will be forced to move to a different habitat. Over many years, wild animals have adapted to respond to changes in the natural environment. Animals are dependent upon plants to live and grow. Plants are dependent upon nutritious soil to live and grow. The formation of soil is a very gradual process, requiring many, many years to build layers rich enough to support the life. Natural disasters often cause imbalances to the soil, affecting the ability of plants and animals to survive. For example, a mudslide may occur after a heavy rainfall when the stabilizing soil is compromised. The soil becomes waterlogged, losing its supportive structure, and it begins to slide downhill. When a drought occurs, ponds, streams, and puddles will all dry up. The earth cracks open from the lack of rain, and without water, crops die of thirst, leaving nothing to hold the soil together. This results in wind erosion. Soil disappears from the fields, carried away by the wind. Sometimes dust storms form for over 100 miles. The Dust Bowl is the name for the time in the 1930s when crops could not grow because there were not enough nutrients in the soil from overplanting. Unimaginably vast clouds of dust blew around in parts of Kansas, Colorado, New Mexico, Oklahoma, and Texas. They were called dust storms, and these huge clouds of dust could pass over the land. In one major Dust Bowl storm, the dust cloud was 1,800 miles wide. 1,800 miles is about the same distance that's between New York City and Denver, Colorado. During these storms, the sky would turn dark. People could not see very well, and they would have to run for shelter. Can you imagine being caught in a dust storm with gritty bits of sandy soil whirling all about your face? That would surely be a disaster, wouldn't it? You will learn more about the causes of the Dust Bowl later on. Because of this interconnected nature of life on Earth, sometimes disasters can be as complicated as a When a drought occurs, some plants and animals die, but others adapt to the temporary changes. Some trees shed their leaves early so that the leaves will not use up all of the water that the plant needs to survive. Some grasses become dormant, going into an inactive state and turning brown to save precious water. Animals slow down too, conserving energy by moving around less and less. Nevertheless, the food chains are always affected by a drought. As plants start to dry up, there is less food for the insects and rodents. With fewer insects and rodents, there is less food for the carnivores. One change can cause changes to take place all along the food chain. Often animals at the top of the food chain decide to take care of themselves, abandoning their young. Without parents to care for them, the dependent babies die, and the balance of nature is out of whack. Not only do droughts affect food chains, they can lead to wildfires as well. Wildfires may be started by lightning or volcanoes. Wildfires can be devastating to human population, burning down homes and businesses. However, after the fire is over, fires can be beneficial for some wildlife habitats. In fact, some fires are started intentionally and are carefully controlled by humans. As you may have learned, some Native Americans set fire to their land after harvesting their crops and before planting the new crop. The ashes from the fire would actually help prepare the land for the new growth to come. Ecologists know that fires are a natural occurrence and that some habitats depend upon fire for their survival. For example, some pine cones remain shut until extreme heat opens them, releasing their seeds. Fires also promote fruit production, resulting in more seeds and berries for wildlife to consume. Some trees may die as a result of the fire, but their decaying trunks provide nesting cavities for birds as well as food for the insects and decomposers. Large animals such as bears, deer, and bobcats rarely die in the fire. Their natural instincts steer them away from the danger, and they flee the area until they sense that it is safe to finally return home. The cycle of life resumes, and soon the balance of nature will return to the forest. Let's look at another natural change that can take place, one that is not a natural disaster, but that can still impact an ecosystem. This natural change is about the balance between predator and prey. Predators are hunters, meaning they hunt and kill other animals. The relationship between these animals, predator and prey, plays an important part in ensuring a healthy balance to Earth's ecosystems. Sometimes the predator prey relationship is thrown off balance by a change that can occur in nature. For example, scientists have studied the relationship between the snowshoe rabbit and their predator, the hawk, the owl, and the lynx. Each of these species has a unique population cycle. About every 10 years, the snowshoe rabbit produces way too many babies for the amount of plant food available to them. They gobble up all of the food, increasing their population temporarily and then leaving little for the next generation of rabbits. This seriously affects the food chain. When one animal eats more plants than it should, it is called overgrazing. As a result, hawks, owls, and lynx all also experience an overpopulation in their own species. They all prey on the rabbits, and their population also increases temporarily. But as summer changes to winter and the rabbits' food runs out, they begin to die out. Then their predators find that there is not enough food for everyone, and then many of them starve to death also. This natural overpopulation of multiple species creates limited resources in the animal's native habitat. But as seasons pass, nature corrects its own imbalance, and the rabbits, the hawks, the owls all repopulate, and their natural cycle will begin all over again. Healthy ecosystems need a variety of living organisms. Every link in an ecosystem's food chain must be strong enough to ensure the survival of all organisms. When one link is broken, the rest of the food chain is affected. A single change can affect all of the organisms living within an ecosystem. Groups of plants may die out, forcing animals to adapt by finding other plants to eat. When the competition for food becomes too great, some animal species may disappear from Earth, becoming extinct. These natural changes disrupt or upset the balance of nature, sometimes making equilibrium difficult to achieve for the many years to come. An example of this imbalance is the disappearance of the eastern wild turkey in the eastern forests of the United States. Because it depended on the American chestnut tree, a tree that is on its last legs and near extinction, the eastern wild turkey can no longer live in its habitat, and the eastern wild turkey has been forced to move to a different habitat. When you hear that the American chestnut tree is on its last legs, do you think it means that this tree actually has legs? You will hear more about this figurative saying later that is used to describe something that it is about to stop working or it will die. Today, you have learned about some of the natural changes to Earth's environment. Next time we get together, we'll talk about some of the ways that humans have changed Earth. Be prepared. In spite of our wonderful brains, we humans are not always too smart when it comes to taking care of our natural world.